Look around modern corporate culture or listen to a football coach's pregame speech, and you will routinely find people citing the art of war as the ultimate manual for dominating the competition. We treat these 13 ancient chapters as a cutthroat playbook because we picture its author, General Sun Tzu, as an unparalleled military mastermind who commanded with iron-fisted authority. The ancient historian Sima Qian recorded the foundational legend of his ruthlessness. To prove his commitment to discipline, Sun Tzu supposedly took the king's favorite concubines, ordered them into military formation, and when they laughed at his commands, he had them executed on the spot. We eagerly emulate this terrifying figure in our own lives, assuming his bloodthirsty genius is the secret to total victory. But the historical record suggests the general who committed those brutal acts might be a complete fabrication. During the Song dynasty, scholars began to notice a glaring historical anomaly. An older, highly detailed record called the Zhuozhuan meticulously documents the exact battles Sun Tzu supposedly won, yet it fails to mention him entirely. Even his birth name, Sun Wu, appears nowhere in earlier texts. Linguists note the surname Sun relates to the word for fugitive, while Wu means martial or warrior. Instead of a real person, the fugitive warrior reads more like an invented persona. The final blow to the myth arrived in 1972, when construction workers in Shandong accidentally unearthed a tomb sealed over 2,000 years ago. Inside were ancient bamboo slips revealing early versions of the text, alongside works by his supposed descendants. The book represents a composite of a continuously developing intellectual tradition, rather than the singular vision of one man. If the ultimate warlord is merely a historical ghost, the entire brutal reputation of his book collapses. Beneath the aggressive surface lies a deeply subversive philosophy. The period in which this text took shape, known as the Warring States period, was defined by centuries of chaotic, ceaseless violence across eastern China. Yet the text produced in this crucible of bloodshed advocates a highly counterintuitive approach to conflict. Deeply anchored in Taoist philosophy, the text treats warfare as an exercise in psychological persuasion. It positions the struggle as a contest for hearts and minds. The central Taoist principle here is parsimony. Instead of burning energy in direct confrontation, a state should hold a compact, unmoving position to outlast opponents. This frugality applies to communication. Silence becomes a tactical advantage, letting you absorb information while the noisy opponent scatters focus. The world's most famous manual on war is actually a philosophical study in how to avoid it. This passive psychological framework quickly escaped the bounds of ancient Chinese philosophy. It shaped centuries of massive global conflict across vastly different cultures and eras. By the 8th century, the text reached Japan, where it was adopted by the great unifiers of the Sengoku period. Its teachings on strategic positioning remained in their military culture long enough to shape Admiral Togo's stunning naval victories centuries later. In the 20th century, communist revolutionaries facing superior conventional armies turned to the book's focus on winning the psychological battle. Mao Zedong explicitly studied its pages to successfully defeat nationalist forces in 1949. Vietnamese forces utilized these exact principles for asymmetrical warfare. Ho Chi Minh translated the work directly for his officers, recognizing that patience and persuasion could neutralize a much larger invading force. The success of these tactics forced Western military doctrines to adapt. American commanders like General Norman Schwarzkopf drew inspiration to orchestrate modern desert campaigns. The universal adoption of this anonymous text proves that psychological mastery and strategic patience scale up. They can defeat brute force across any era, technology, or ideology. So, how does a philosophy used to topple empires apply to a workplace dispute or a family argument? The first step is the frugality of emotion. When faced with direct aggression, the strategic move is to not react. By remaining passive, you allow an angry opponent to exhaust their own energy against your stillness. Step 2 applies silence over speech. Active listening functions as an offensive tactic here. If you remain quiet, an over-communicating opponent will almost always talk themselves into a corner, revealing their true motives and vulnerabilities. Step 3 is to win the heart. personal disputes should not be treated as battles for total destruction. Instead, they are delicate exercises in diplomacy, requiring you to cultivate the relationship rather than break the other person. True strategic power in daily life derives from absolute, unwavering discipline over your own ego, rather than the aggressive domination of those around you. Society turns to a legendary warlord's manual, looking for an edge in aggression, only to be handed a framework for peace. It is a brilliant historical irony. A nameless intellectual tradition managed to conquer the world precisely by hiding behind the mask of a fictional warrior. The text reveals that brute force is the lowest form of strategy. It is meant only for those who have already failed at persuasion. The greatest, most absolute victory you can achieve in any conflict, whether on a battlefield or in a corporate boardroom, is the one where no one actually has to fight.